Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, friends, who whatever time of day you're listening to this. Welcome to another episode of the Refined Savage podcast. Let's talk about the breath belt. The breath belt, my new favorite piece of gear for the gym, even outside the gym. If you're doing any kind of hard style workout at home or running or anything like that, the breath belt is fantastic. Jesse's line is anyone with a pair of hips can use this thing. It is a great piece of equipment. I highly recommend it. People are learning new ways to use this thing all the time. I use it as an underbelt when I'm doing anything super heavy. Works like a charm. I love it. Really helps with my bracing. Give them a holler at thebreathbelt.com. Use the code SAVAGE, all caps, SAVAGE20 at checkout. Warrior CBD. Warrior CBD is the best stuff around. CBD oil is a dime a dozen. Everyone has their own brand of CBD oil. Everyone is being sponsored by a CBD oil company, but a lot of it is garbage, folks. You really have to pay attention to what you're putting in your body. Warrior CBD is the light. I love it. I use it every night. Use the drops, the 2,000 milligram drops. I'm a big fan. It is the best stuff I've ever used. That's why I reached out to them when I was looking for a CBD company to sponsor the show. I love the product. I love the people. The customer service is fantastic. If you have questions about whether or not you can take CBD oil with your current job, give them a holler. Nancy answers all the messages right there on Instagram. You can check them out at warriorcbdofficial.com. Use the code WARRIOR20 off at checkout. Viking Coffee. Evan is just killing it. Evan Armstrong out in the Bowling Green, Ohio area. His business is expanding. It's all word of mouth. It's just a fantastic product, and you can't go wrong with Viking Coffee. My favorite is obviously Old Man Strength. I've heard from a lot of people that that's their favorite too, but I also love his Kona coffee. I love his Ethiopian coffee. What was the one I just tried? And Coffee for All is fantastic. Send It is really, 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 really good. I love that one too. But check it out, VikingCoffeeCo.com. Use the code VikingCoffee10 at checkout. Hey, Christmas is coming up. Makes a great stocking stuffer. Cerberus. We are back in the swing of things, so to speak. I see a lot of competition starting back up, at least powerlifting and strongman. They're wearing masks. I know, not quite the same, but we're back in business. So I'm hoping that will happen for Highland Games in the summer as well. So if you need any kind of gear for your strength journey, powerlifting, Olympic lifting, bodybuilding, strongman, Highland Games, whatever it is, Cerberus has it. Everything from smelling salts all the way down to gear like t-shirts and hats and things like that. Their belts are amazing. Their wraps are awesome. They have smelling salts. They have tacky. Anything you need to compete at your next competition, Cerberus has. I don't know why you would go anywhere else. Cerberus is run by athletes in the Highland Games, in strongman, in powerlifting, and they are making products for you. Who better to go to? Check them out at Cerberus-strength.us. Use the code REFINEDSAVAGE10 at checkout for 10% off. Serious Steel. If you're getting ready to outfit any kind of gym, your home gym, your CrossFit box, your school weight room, whatever you need, Serious Steel is the answer. All the same equipment, all the top names, all the top brands at much cheaper prices, much better deals, much better customer service than those big giant corporations. I'm telling you guys, again, you got to support the people who are us, our people, our ilk, our guys that are competing in these events. Why go to a big company when you can go to guys who are really in the mix with you, knee deep in this stuff, and really know what they're talking about? Serious Steel. Check them out at SeriousSteel.com. Use the code SAVAGE at checkout for 10% off. And finally, today, Stay Classy Meats. Stay Classy Meats has the best meat delivered right to your door. Small batch farms out of Bozeman, Montana, drinking fresh Montana streams, eating fresh Montana grasses, humanely processed, no antibiotics, and shipped directly to your home. It's amazing. You don't even have to leave the house to get the best meat on the market. If you aren't hunting your own game, Stay Classy Meats is the way to go. Even if you are hunting your own game, Stay Classy Meats may still be the best way to go. Avoid those prions and getting mad cow disease or whatever the hell they get from these deer. But check them out, stayclassymeats.com. Use the code SAVAGE at checkout. Hey, and one more thing before we end these advertisements for the day. Check out the online programming. If you guys have questions about the online programming, give me a holler. We have programs, hard style, as if you have no equipment at home and you're just doing your workouts, or if you just like body weight workouts, hard style is for you. Showtime, if you're into the golden era, old school bodybuilding, get jacked program, Showtime's the one for you. Power is basically the same program I used as a Highland Games athlete. If you are looking to be an explosive athlete, that's the way to go. Primal is our gym programming that we program every single day at Blind Dog Gym. Gara is our kettlebell workout. You can use that one. It's all kettlebells and body weight stuff. And Foundations, if you have a young athlete, if you are a coach who has to train a football team or a basketball team or a volleyball team, Foundations is perfect for you. You get the program every week, and you can put your team through it without any worry about exercises being too difficult or too much to handle. It's perfect for you. So check them out. Shoot me a direct message at Refined Savage, at the Refined Savage on Instagram, and we'll go from there. Hey, if you like this episode, guys, start sharing this with people, okay? We are working hard for you. Share the episode. Leave us a comment on iTunes and let us know you liked it. Give us a 5-star rating. All this stuff that they ask you to do on these other podcasts that I rarely do. Hey, it's not that big of a deal. Never going to charge you for these episodes. Shoot over there and give me a 5-star rating and share this with your friends, okay? All right, that's enough for today. Hey, today on the show, this is a conversation with one of the people on the planet I absolutely love, Kibwe Johnson. Kibwe has been on the show before along with his wife, Crystal. I was on his show, the Fortius podcast, which is an amazing podcast especially if you're into throwing. But we're going to re-release it today on this platform because I think it was a great conversation. I think you guys will dig it. Me and Kibwe just shooting the shit and having a nice conversation. I love this guy. I always love sitting down and talking to him. One of those humans on the planet that I really like and really respect, and it's always fun to catch up with him. So sit back, relax, enjoy the show, and we'll see you guys at the end.
All right, Mark Valenzi.
What's happening?
What's going on, man? Welcome to the podcast. And season 2, one kind of ended, well, as it should. I won't even say abruptly, but it ended. And season 1 and season 2 is now going. So thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. I think I'm the least accomplished thrower you've ever had on the show.
I mean, well, and that's the thing, right? I don't necessarily want this to only be throwers. I know that's a significant part of the audience, but I think what I'm really after is value from people who don't throw, right? I think more, shall we say, education or just experiences, that kind of thing, can make throwers and people within like my more niche just that much better. That's kind of how I feel anyway. So that's why those are the things that I'm doing, because that's what it is.
Well, that's how I started off my show too. Was a lot of Highland Games guys and a lot of track guys, and you learn after you have them on the show a few times that some people, if that's all they have to really talk about, that gets real boring really fast, and that was nice. I think the first time we did the podcast, I mean, we really hadn't sat down for any length of time. And the first time we did the podcast in St. Pete, it was such a nice, refreshing moment to have both you and Crystal on there, who had like real live opinions on stuff, and have done things outside the circle, which was great.
Yeah. and that's why I really like that, because I love track and field and throwing like the next man, but I think as I've kind of, I'm what you would call ancient in the sport. And what I'm learning, like the longer that I've been in it, is like, yeah, the X's and O's of the events are really cool, but like there's so much more, and I'm finding more, shall we say, efforts in going after those things that are really piquing my interest.
Yeah.
And either trying to adapt that to throwing and training and that sort of thing, or just keeping it for myself, because that's just, again, what I'm interested in. And not all of it's going to apply across the board, and that's okay.
Yeah. And we talked about your kind of philosophy on hammer throwing and how much it relates to life in general, maybe more so than all the events. You have so much going on around you as you're trying to stay calm in the middle and zen and stay in the moment and don't get ahead of yourself. And I was actually trying to explain this to Zach Pape, who's like my right-hand man at the gym, another Ashland guy, Zach,
Sure.
and about how, hammer throwing is to me, I look at you and I look at your writing, and you're very much the modern day philosopher, and your martial art just happens to be the hammer instead of kung fu or something like that,
Yeah, I like that. Never thought of
Feel
it.
free to use that.
I'll send you an invoice.
That's right.
But yeah, man, like, I'm not really sure kind of when these ideas kind of started for me personally. But it was kind of clear that there was just more to it than hitting the gym, getting stronger.
Yeah.
And as I speak about these things, especially now, the longer that I am speaking about them, I am careful to like I'm not trying to say one way is better, right? And especially coming from experience, like I've done all the ways, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I've done the straight just smash the face in the gym thing. I've done the more we don't need to lift heavy thing, but we lift a whole lot kind of thing. And ultimately, like, I think the more people understand about me personally is like, I'm definitely I like to pick and choose and take from different parts. Also, ultimately, like, you kind of just have to experiment and do what you got to do for yourself. And not only includes like the actual training itself, but your mindset looking at the training that you're trying to do.
Well, I think that's the best, what you said about you've kind of been through so many different systems. You've been through, Judd's system and Babbitt's system and Coach B's system and Coach Mack, which God love you if you can even figure out Coach Mack's system. I know he speaks a different language than I do. But, I felt like after all the years of working with training athletes and training everyday people, I had a great background because I had spent a lot of time with Judd, and I had spent a lot of time down at Westside. And I had long phone conversations with John Smith and, Joe Ken. I'm a big fan of Joe Ken's stuff. But I don't think I actually had a system of my own until I was in my 40s, and I was basically just, for a while there, I was a Judd clone, or then I was a Louis clone. And it took until I actually had all those experiences and all those mentors and all those people I'd learned from, that I could come back to a center and say, okay, well, Judd does this great. I really like the way he does this. So I'm going to take all that from him. And then I'm going to take all this stuff from Louis, and I'm going to kind of put it into this tier system like Joe Ken does, and make it my own system, which, I've been telling people I didn't have my own system until I was well over 40 years old, and I think that it's experience.
Yeah. I mean, and that's really great. And going back to the beginning, like, that's exactly why I thought having you on the podcast was so great, because that's kind of my point with a lot of these things. Like, there's nothing wrong with kind of, well, you know what? I'm just gonna say it. I don't think it's the best thing to claim a system.
Right.
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 I think influences, because it just kind of depends on the words that people use. I think influences are the most efficient way to do something, and it kind of releases you of the, I don't know, shall we say, burden of a system, right? Because then like all of the emotion and all of the oftentimes BS that goes into thinking one way is there, and then it just totally impacts, and the biases are there, and the, you know what I mean, and the blinders are on, and like use those experiences that you have to basically reflect and kind of help you in the moment. But I tell people nowadays, like, let's don't say that you have a specific system. Like it'll probably in the long run do more harm than good.
Yeah, it's that, I think it's that Bruce Lee motto, that Bruce Lee mantra, that be like water, and just, take from everything that works. The more I think about it, I mean, do we really think that no matter what system Judd ran, he wouldn't have been successful with his athletes? He could have, he always talks about Al Schotterman making him do like 15 reps in the snatch.
Yeah.
Which he would never program, but he believed so much in Al Schotterman that he did whatever he said to do. And I think when you look at, especially with all the coaches you've been around, all those guys had that kind of undefinable spirit that you're just willing to follow. And it doesn't matter what they do. That's the big secret that nobody in the fitness industry at least wants to talk about. That, you know what, everything works. Everything works. It comes down to who's coaching you, and do you buy in or don't you buy in? And that's just what I found over the years. I went from this constant pursuit of what is the perfect system to realizing everything's the perfect system. Get better as a human, get better as a leader, get better as a coach, and your system automatically becomes ingenious.
Totally, man. So, I mean, like, oddly enough, and this is why, when discussions of Dr. B alone, or, North America versus Dr. B, or anyone's, opinions on the matter, it used to kind of annoy me and, shall we say, trigger me. And now, like, I'm a little bit better at like not letting that get to me, because it's more about like it's just, what you know. And you don't know what you don't know. So I think, oddly enough, I never understood or really thought or attempted to think that there was one system, or that there was something like specific that needed to happen, right? So like, going through my coaching lineage, I probably would have told you like, yeah, there's one way, or there is a best way. And like, Dr. B was the first one to be like, no, I mean, everything can work. It doesn't really, ultimately, for performance. Now, and we're talking about track and field and throwing, right? I won't speak about like football or anything else, although it's probably likely, but like my experience and training isn't there. But everything can work, and it's kind of, that's where the coach and the artistry of coaching itself comes in, because that's kind of on you to figure it out. And also, just because it works doesn't mean it always will, right? So again, we're playing with that artistry that like you have to work it out. It's not an exact science, and it never will be, in terms of helping an athlete to a specific performance on any given day. It just doesn't work that way. You can have days when, you're more than pretty confident, but ultimately, like, you know what I mean? Like, there's just so many variables at play. Like, you never know what your athlete eats, or, at the world level, like you might miss the shuttle to come to the to the state, which happens. And like, you know what I mean? You're just completely jacked up, but your body could have been in the best state ever. But because you let all that external like anxiety kind of come into play, then you know what I mean? You compete like crap. That those sort of things happen, and you just can't really do anything about it. But anyway.
Yeah, I'm always skeptical of the program that's going to peak you out for one day in a 4-year cycle, or even in a year cycle, where you're going to be on point that day, no matter what. And there's so many, like you just talked about, there's so many variables. Now, I think the difference, like you said, comes down to how high a level of athlete are you working with. If I'm going to work with my son, he's 15 years old, I can't fuck him up. no matter what I do with him, he's going to get stronger and throw further. That's another dirty little secret. These guys who are running these $1 million athlete sports complexes, parents out there, look, the guy down the street, the ex-power lifter who has a bench and a squat rack in his garage, he's going to get the exact same results or maybe even better than these high-priced sports facilities. If I were going to train Hayden, no matter what I do with him, he's going to throw farther. He's going to get stronger. If I'm working with you or I'm working with another high-level athlete, there needs to be a lot of conversation going on between coach and athlete and saying, how do you feel today? How did that work for you last week? Let's look back at your journal and see how you threw when we were doing this cycle last time. And a lot of times that takes putting your ego aside and realizing that in order to lead an athlete at that level, you're going to need to get a lot of input from that athlete because they've been there. They've been there probably further than you have.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a lot more than the X's and O's conversation. And it's this topic has a lot to do with why like things kind of drop off, or shall we say can be hit or miss after the NCAA, because NCAA aged athletes are still kind of in that realm of, it doesn't really matter what the hell I do to you, you're gonna get stronger, you're gonna get better. And and again, men and women are a little bit different. Like I think, anyway, they're a little bit different. So you graduate at whatever age, and once you kind of get up 22, 23, 24, 25, like kind of into that age, like the getting stronger thing, it's a lot harder to do so if you can even do it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean, by mid-20s. And after that, like there's a lot more things that come into play. And in my experience, like that's the bit where historically in the last couple of decades, like things are kind of changing now, but in the last couple of decades, like that's why, Eastern Europe typically at the majors does better than the US in the throws. That is changing now, and that's really, really exciting. I think there's definitely a major shift there. We could probably talk about that forever too, but because there's it's more holistic, I guess. The training from an Eastern European perspective is a lot more holistic, where here, especially the kids, and we always have kids make the majors out of NCAA, right? And more often than not, those athletes don't do very well there, which is honestly not really any fault of theirs. And also, again, it's not really any fault of the NCAA coaches either. Like, trust me, I'm on everyone's side here. It's just a matter of, my interest is what can we do to kind of eliminate those factors, and why isn't that happening? You know what I mean? And
So you've been around all these athletes and seen what they've gone through. I mean, obviously we're behind the 8 ball a little bit in the fact that we don't usually pick up the hammer until college. I think we're also behind the 8 ball a little bit because not only do we get kids in with no hammer experience in college, we get kids in with maybe questionable coaching at the high school and junior high school level, as far as weight training. And I volunteered to work with my son's high school football team next year, and I've got to sit down with the coach and see if that's going to happen. But I've been studying them the whole season and just watching them and seeing what they can do and what they can't do. There's maybe 2, maybe 3 kids on the team that I would feel confident putting a bar on their back and telling them it's okay to squat. The rest of them, I've got to figure out, we got to go back to like a block 0. Can you jump rope? Can you do a long jump? Can you do basic push-ups and pull-ups and calisthenics? And can we just move like you're supposed to be able to move before we drop a bar on your back and say, okay. And I think we do a really, really piss poor job of that. And I think a lot of it goes back to money. And I think a lot of it goes back to these sports performance places. And a lot of it goes back to football and track programs in high school, where the guy who gets that job was the guy who either still lifts weights or lifted weights a bunch in high school, and we just kind of give them that gig. And God love them, they're doing the best they can. They're not doing stuff like we are and researching this stuff. But when you look at those athletes from Europe, I mean, are they starting younger with the hammer? Are they starting younger with better coaching as far as mechanics of the body and conditioning and that kind of stuff? Or is it kind of a conglomeration of all of it?
Short answer, yes, they start younger for the most part. The club system is pretty well developed. You know what I mean? Like, it's not unheard of for, you know, kids to kind of be introduced at least. It's no telling how long they can stay in there, but at least introduced to all the events, including jab and all of those kinds of things. And then they typically stay in these events until they're kind of either high school age. I've heard some stories, possibly even like university age, before they even like go down to something specific if they intend to stay in the sport.
They start as generalists, kind of, they're long jumping, they're running. Yeah.
I think over there, the difference is they are generalists longer than American kids are. And that's generally speaking, of course. Obviously, there's outliers on both sides. And beyond that, so also, I would say, in my experience, again, the throws coaching from a technical perspective is not that much better, if at all. Like, I would say, I mean, it's roughly the same. There's just less people there if you look at a ratio, right? But the training and, again, the general fitness and that sort of thing, I think, is A, either better, or B, there's just more attention paid to that versus, you know, a 11-year-old girl who's fresh out of volleyball and is like, you're a thrower, right? Like, that girl in Europe, probably, you know, 7 times out of 10 or so, right, is still going to do everything. They wouldn't just be like, you're a thrower because, you know, you're the big girl, like, right? It just, if she had an interest in doing track or something like that, like, she would just do track. She would do high jump. They probably do like 100 meters and she would throw some, right? And she would stay with that for a number of years.
Yeah, it's a problem. And again, I think a lot of this comes down to money. You know, we have girl volleyball players in my facility who play volleyball all year round.
Yeah.
And soccer players and baseball players and wrestlers, and that's all they do year round. And as much as football, you know, I've joked with you before, and I've tried to talk Hayden into quitting football. I mean, they've won one game in the last 2 years, so you know, it's kind of like you know, maybe we should just focus on throwing. But
that's why it's good that you're coming in to do their training.
I don't know if I'm not a miracle worker, Kib.
I never, you know, have trouble spotting. Like, that's probably why they have 1-2 games.
Yeah. But you know, all the stuff he gets from football, you know, the running, the jumping, the, you know, the actual sport of football itself gives you such a generalist background. You know, you're doing all these things, you're cutting, you're moving, and you played football, you understand that. It's and then you build, you know, the leadership and then working as a team and all that stuff is super important. So, you know, God love him, he's sticking it out for the last 2 years. But
and you're right. There's I think one of the issues with throws athletes, especially as they graduate university, one of the issues with kind of sticking it out and essentially grit, sometimes / most of the time, like, they never played football.
yeah.
So it's like, yeah, that is absolutely a thing that you learn, and not because, you know, you're being punished or anything, but like, you just kind of gotta, there is a certain level of just do it because you gotta.
Yeah. Hard, right?
And it's hard, right? Like, I mean, I won't go so far as to say you can't succeed as an international level hammer thrower if you can't handle things being hard, but it'll be really, really hard.
Well, how many times have I told the story on the podcast and when we went down to visit you and you're working at this multi-million dollar, facility, and you've got your squat rack under the bleachers, it's 150 degrees and all the bars are rusty, and it's just like, fuck. And Reggie Jaggers asked me, he's like, why is he doing that? And I'm like, he's a fucking samurai. He's just down there because it's hard, man.
That's right. Yeah. See, that should go on a shirt.
Yeah.
Yeah. That gym was filled with Sorinex equipment, like all the best Sorinex stuff. That was good. That was fun.
Yeah, that was when you were getting ready before this whole COVID stuff.
Yeah.
You were much lighter than the last time you made an Olympic team, right? You were leaner, lighter. Your body looked more athletic to me.
Yeah, I was probably leaner. So my last competition was World Champs 2017, and I think I was like 220 something. I want to say 224 maybe. And within 2 weeks of that competition, I had lost like 13 pounds. I don't really know why. Something that's always existed with me, like when I train, I'm heavier because I'm eating more, right? I think my natural state is lighter, just kind of is.
Yep.
Which I guess, it's good. It could be worse, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Metabolism and all that. But anyway, so when I started training again, it like kind of the same thing happened. Within 2 weeks, I had gained like 10 pounds.
Yeah.
But I didn't get higher. So all of that time training, I didn't get any higher than like 217, which I wouldn't say that's a problem. Certainly people have thrown really far. Koji was 214 when he threw 84, 86, his PR. And I had a year, I don't remember what year this was, maybe 2014, 13 or 14 is one of the years that I didn't win, I think. And I had this brilliant idea of like, how light can I be to throw really far? No reason. It was, in hindsight, really stupid. But it was just kind of what I did, right? And I think it was like one of those kind of vain things like, well, I mean, if they can do it, I can do it. I pretty much carried a lot of that in the background of my training in terms of, throwing 80 meters, throwing 80 feet, throwing 25 meters and doing those sorts of things. So, but when I have thrown my farthest, I was high 220s to low 230s. Like my 80-meter throws and anything over 78, I would say I averaged probably 230. But when I came back, I couldn't get above 220 again.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, if I had eaten more and like done a lot of those things, I probably could have. Because the other thing that changed too is I started intermittent fasting, and you know what I mean, like my fatty coffees in the morning and stuff. And it worked. It worked for like the physique and you know what I mean, and being trim or whatever. But when I started training again, I was like, shit, like I do want some more weight. So I started eating breakfast again and whatever else. And again, a little bit, but still, it just never really came back.
Yeah, I do I do kind of the warrior diet. I do one meal a day. And I love the fasting. It makes me feel better. I think it boosts my immune system. I like the fact that I'm not digesting food all day long. Coming from what we did, we were always eating and at least me, I always felt like I was always full because I think my natural state is more around 200 pounds too. And I bulked up to 310. And so I do the fasting and I eat once a day, but I am very cognizant now of if I don't take in enough calories at that meal, I don't perform as well as I should that next day. So it's a real delicate balance. You're supposed to, with that warrior diet, take like a 4-hour feeding window, I usually just take like one big giant meal, but there's always that kind of back and forth, whether, am I doing this for physique or am I doing this for performance? And it always comes down to, it doesn't matter that I'm 47 years old now. I'm always going to be a performance athlete, and hopefully I look good, at the pool because of that, and that took a little bit of a thought process to figure out what am I actually doing here? Because I was kind of like this rudderless ship for quite a while, but that's kind of why I was asking about you coming back leaner and what your thoughts were behind it.
Yeah. Well, and I think and so the rudderless ship is interesting. So going back to that last competition, so that was like September, end August or beginning of September, something like that, 2017. I won a year almost to the day, like didn't touch a weight.
Really?
Yeah, I was like, oh, I couldn't be bothered. I didn't want to, in my eyes at that time, waste the time, and I just didn't want to. I just had no interest. And it took a while before I even sat and kind of thought about it. It might have been a conversation with Crystal. I was like, honestly, I think it's because I've been training since freshman year of high school, really, in the weight room, the majority of the months out of the year. And that was before I was a professional athlete. And then, with Judd, we had a little bit more time off in the summers, with Judd as a pro versus as a collegiate athlete. And then with Dr. B, the standard length of time off was 2 weeks. I think the most I ever took with him was 3, and the least amount I took with him was 8 days. Right back to training. You know what I mean? So when I stopped, it was like, whew, I don't want to do anything. And it was kind of, vanity that got me back in it. I'm at, where were we? I'm at high school nationals with my athletes, and I'm taking a bunch of pictures with people and my friends, and I'm like, ugh. Look at that guy. And I was just I just didn't like what I saw. And then as soon as I got home, I started lifting again. And that was just lifting the lift. I hadn't committed to training again yet. And so I do think that there's something very different mindset wise between lifting and training. And it doesn't even have to be lifting to look good. It just has to be lifting, right? Moving your body and and feeling strong in your skin, and that you can do things. And then training, because training is, it's different. It's a different mindset. It's a grind. It's all of those things. And so that was a fun little thought experiment for me that little period of time.
Kind of fat shamed yourself.
Yeah, basically, man. I was like, okay.
Well, that's one of the things when I stopped competing, and it actually helped me develop the system that I do now with people and myself. Is it was such a structured thing I had to do. I knew that I had to do some kind of heavy pull or squat on Monday. I knew I had to do some kind of heavy push on Tuesday, and it was just like, okay. And I'm such a I hate when people say they're ADD. That's such a buzzword these days, but my brain's all over the place. And I do so much better if I wake up that morning and go, okay, what do I want to do today? And what do I need to do today? And let's kind of make those two things come together. And that takes some experience. I wouldn't trust that for a young athlete. What I did with Hayden is I just kind of said, here's a list of 15 exercises. And I want you to kind of hit 2 or 3 of these a day, 3 or 4 times a week. And we're not going to get into, oh, you only got 2 workouts in this week. We're going to have to do 5 next week, and that way it gives him some freedom to choose within the parameters of what I know are going to make a 15-year-old kid stronger. That seems to work really well. But he still brings it to me and says, "Hey, what do you think about this?" And I mean, he's basically programming for himself at this level, and I think that's great. Gives him some ownership of his program.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, there's structure there. There's freedom, and because I mean, no one really wants to be told what to do. Least of all, teenagers. And so,
that's why I can't hold a real job, Kev.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like, this is the dream to be unemployable. Like, I'm finding all these things lately, and it's like, yeah, that makes sense, because like that's definitely an energy. Yeah, but I really like that, and that's kind of similar in a way to like really being fluid within training programs, because I mean, everyone's kind of been there, but like to show up and feel like complete, dog shit, but still knock out the heaviest of the program day in squats, like, and again, like, I understand it, because I never listened to those signs until like very near the end of my, career. So like, I've been through all of those days of just feeling like complete garbage and doing it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and that's why, like, the whole grit conversation, I think, is pretty, it can be slippery. Because on one hand, like, yeah, basically it's kind of doing it because you gotta, but it's also like, trying to be careful of like injuries, because those, when you feel like utter crap, you are more susceptible to injury. So in a world of performance, like, that's one of those things you kind of gotta really look at, which, taking the conversation further, is more about thinking about intuition. So I think, and that's the other thing I was gonna say about you working with Hayden, is like, intuition is I'm not going to school. Intuition is like, it's kind of lost, and learning how to get that back, especially within like the fitness industry, is like kind of magic, right? Because like, some days you're going to be amazing and some days you're not, but so long as you have kind of an overview structure of like what you kind of want to do on most days, and then within those days, depending on how you feel when you show up, you can modify the program. Now, again, that might be for more non-performance athletes, but still within it, because there's certain degrees that like that still works. So say like with Dr. B, we kind of did things like that, and I know some other athletes have too, but more often than not, that doesn't exist.
Yeah, and with that, if you want to call it the CrossFit mentality, and I don't have anything against CrossFit. I think it's one of the best things that's happened to the fitness industry, maybe ever. Get more people involved and off the couch. But what you have is these people who always want to push that envelope. How many rounds can you get? How fast can you get through those rounds? How heavy can you go within those rounds? And, when I deal with my own program, I went out on Sunday, it was freezing here, and I walked for a mile with a 160-pound sandbag on my shoulders. Why? I don't know. I read there, someone, was like, oh, I'm just going to take this 160-pound sandbag and walk for a mile. And I felt like dog crap afterwards. And my wife asked, what are you doing? It was stupid. That was dumb, So, but I don't do that shit with my athletes or my clients. I'm a lot more respectful of the fact that, I'm trying, number one, to do no harm, and then find ways to get them in the best possible shape, or to get their vertical jump better, or to get their 40-yard dash better in really the most basic, simple ways possible. Because if I can get your vertical jump higher in a very basic, simple way, why do I need to attach bands to your bar? Or why do I need to attach a tendo unit to your bar? What if I can just have you jumping on a tire, and all of a sudden your vertical jump's getting better? Maybe down the road, we'll have to do stuff like that. But let's just find basic ways where I'm not going to hurt you and keep you improving. And with that CrossFit mentality, I don't think we have enough people who they're students of the game. I don't think they're students of the game. They love CrossFit. They love functional fitness. They started out in somebody else's gym. They decided they loved this. They went and took their weekend seminar. Then they went and opened up their own gym. And now they have 2 years in the game. And they're bringing all these people in and they're downloading things that they see David Goggins do. And they're just going to make them do this shit. It's just like, you are going to kill somebody. And that's why all your clients are leaving, and it's a difficult balance, with getting people, like you say, grittier and not hurting them. It's a little bit of a balance act.
It is. And I don't know, in some cases, probably unfortunately, because you kind of have to rely on the individual to tell you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like and that can be hard because, there's going to be the individual that will they'll lie, to the coach or whatever, but they also lie to themselves because some people won't push
right
enough to really even get to where it's a true indicator of like, pain or injury. That's what my down South Georgia football coaches say to us. It was like, I just started, okay, we'll get back in there.
Yeah. Are you injured or are you hurt? Right.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, that's honestly, this is really interesting. I don't know if I've dug this deep into like, the grit and the dangers of trying to say that, because it's language is, and words is kind of difficult. And what makes it worse is I won't say everyone, people will take the words that you use and assume that you're not meaning, what you are meaning, or, the opposite or whatever else, right? Especially in social media, and it ends up being a cluster. And so, yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's just one of those things where you just sign your name to whatever you got to say. And it's like, I mean, if you don't understand, like I'd happily have a conversation, DM me or something like that, right? But like, there's a lot of outrage over everything that's said, and it's like, all right, man, well,
I think that's what we're dealing with in society right now at every level. It's, I don't know. You're Canadian now, so
yeah. I have been for a few years. I think 2016. I think I got it early.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, because you were up there, right? Yeah. So I don't know, the outrage. I'm starting to, on a completely different topic, I look at my social media now, and I've done a lot with my social media. So I'm down to just Instagram, which is just as big a cesspool as any of the other ones. I refuse to look at it in the morning until I have gotten up and drunk a liter of water, done 10 to 15 minutes of meditation and a half hour reading. Then I'll look and check my text messages and no social media. I put a 2-hour block on my Instagram that if I go over 2 hours, it shuts down. And then I refuse to look at it once my wife and son are home for the night, So when I'm on it, not only have I gotten rid of stopped following people who have different political views than myself, I've stopped following people who have the same political views as myself, because let's not say that. Let's say if you are adamant about expressing your political views constantly, I'm going to get rid of you. It's okay that if you have a different view or the same view, just let's talk about puppies and meditating and eating mushrooms and swinging kettlebells. We don't need to talk about guiding,
Yeah.
And it's driving me nuts down here.
Yeah. Well, all of my social media is there, and oddly, like both Chris and I don't know, there must be something to that. We like got locked out of our Facebook accounts, like, and it was like days before the my online throws conference in
Jeez.
May. And so when I'm like scrambling, because like half of the presenters, I was chatting through Facebook, and it ended up being fine in that respect. But you try to like get access to the account again. There's no reason why it's gone, because it's
Yep.
like it's just us, right? We don't say anything like that can justify getting kicked out or whatever. But then after like a couple of weeks and they hadn't fixed the problem yet, I was like, I'm good.
Yeah, right.
Stopped caring about it. It's been however many months now to this day, and like I don't think we're going back unless there's like a vital reason having to do with like business,
Yeah.
and it's probably not happening, unfortunately. So there's that, man. Like yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't be on Instagram at all if it wasn't for the business. I post things to Instagram. They pop up on our gym page on Facebook. But I haven't been on Facebook. I think it's going on close to a year now. And I don't miss it at all. And I wish there will come a time where I'll be off of it altogether. I think in the next iteration of whatever Blind Dog becomes when we move south, I've got a lot of ideas about that, but I want to get to a point where I'm not part of the problem. And I think being on there, sometimes inevitably you become part of the problem just by feeding the beast, right?
Yeah, I think there's something to be said for feeding the beast, and personally, that's been interesting for me too, and not because there's a different. It's a fine line, like similar to the grit conversation. There's a fine line between like getting overly emotional about things that on its surface, let's be honest, you should be emotional about, but that's kind of the quickest way to not have like a legitimate conversation with someone.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like, all right, well, I mean, the best I can do and the best I can hope anyone does is just take care of their own shit. Like you yourself, as a man, as a woman, and as a whatever you call yourself, like just take care of your own thing. Take care of yourself, and not to say that everything else will just kind of work out, but it'll probably be a little bit easier if that's what the conversation was. So, another similarity of like training and to try to shy away from having one view of how something works, or one view of how a thrower should be. I don't agree with their now, as I am, as a whatever age I am, 39, I guess now. I don't believe that there's one view in politics. Like I just don't, and it's honestly, it's something that I've never understood. Like, well, two things can be true at the same time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, and it's one of those things that like nowadays, what's more annoying about it is kind of how it's portrayed, and it's portrayed to pull at a lot of these emotional, triggers and whatever else is going on. When in reality, I think maybe I'm being too optimistic, but I think most people agree that two things can be true, but because you know what I mean, like that's how it's brought about and kind of just lectured at people, then they end up taking one side, and then if someone takes one side, then naturally there's another side. Personally, I don't know if I don't really buy into that.
I don't think most people do. And I think that's what's so sad about the state of and I don't know what it's like in Canada, but at least the state of the United States is, I think the vast majority of people would consider themselves somewhere in the middle of all this stuff, and maybe more like libertarian in some regards. As I think there's way more people in the middle who just leave us alone, keep us safe as far as from foreign invaders. Don't tell me what I can do with my body. don't, if I want to put on a pair of high heels, don't tell me I can't do that. All this stuff is on the fringe that they're arguing about, and they make it seem like this is huge.
Yeah. And just like what you said there, that checks 3 or 4 boxes on both sides.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, that's exactly what I think most people kind of want, whatever. But like, and in my personal opinion, that's exactly how it should be. You know what I mean? But like, that's just, that's not how it's staged.
And I think, to be honest, I think Trump has, we've talked before. I can't see how any sane human has one of these guys with a sign in their front yard for either one of these candidates. But I think Trump has dialed it down to a science, because if you listen to, I remember hearing an interview with him on Howard Stern, probably 25 years ago, where he's pro-gay rights and he's pro-legalizing drugs and he's, this New York liberal. And then all of a sudden, I really think he has mastered, everyone thinks, oh, this guy needs to shut up. He needs to stay off Twitter. I think he does all this shit on purpose to gin up this base of yahoos who want to hear him say outrageous shit like this,
Yeah. And in a way, he what's it, First Amendment, right? Like, you should be allowed, I should say, allowed to say what the hell you want to say. But then, then there's that conversation of like, but that doesn't protect you from, if Joe Blow's boss wants to fire him for what he tweeted, then like, that's also Joe Blow's boss's prerogative. So like, that's one of those things you can have both ways. Yeah, say what the hell you want, but like,
there are repercussions.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things we've talked about, Hayden and I, about, hey, he doesn't post much on social media, which is great. But, if I'm a football or a throws coach in this day and age, I'm checking your social media to make sure you're not a racist, to make sure you're not a bigot, to make sure you're not smoking weed with your buddies on the weekends. I'm checking all this stuff,
Yeah, I mean, there's, like at IMG, like there were 1 or 2 seminars a year for, one was specifically social media. I mean, I'm sure you can imagine, like social media is just killing careers before they even start.
Yeah.
Because it's like kids are just saying stuff. And in a way, like that's, well, I would say in a way it's kind of unfair for adults. You know what I mean? Twitter's been around for however long. Kids, it's a lot closer to, what their likely mentality is. But like for a 55-year-old man who tweeted something 20 years ago, like, I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Maybe give him some sensitivity training and then and be done with it. But like, I don't know.
I had Jack Donovan on the show 2 weeks ago, and Jack wrote the book The Way of Men.
Okay.
And he is, I want to say 44, 45. And we talked both on the air and off the air about how not that he regretted the way he said things, or maybe the groups he talked to back in the day, but you could tell he was on this evolutionary tip where he was changing and looking for ways to become more positive. And he ends all his posts on Instagram now with this stay solar, this kind of keep your head up, see the positive light in people and lights in situations. And to me, a guy who can go through this transformation and realize, maybe some of that shit I said when I was in my 20s was stupid. And now that I'm 40 or 44, all I can do is realize that, yes, that was stupid. Yes, I've made all these changes in my behavior and my thought process, and all these books I've read and people I've talked to and things I've done have led to this point now where I'm a better human being at 44 than I was at 24. And shit, if you're not a better human being at 44 than you were at 24,
Just stop.
you've wasted your whole life.
Yeah, man. I think that's great. I think that's well, and part of that conversation too, that in my experience and opinion that goes along with that is like the understanding that, if someone isn't, well, they're essentially just still kind of on their path. You know what I mean? And so like it's not it doesn't come with a judgment of, well, that person's a piece of crap for continuing to act like he did when he was in his 20s. It's more about, this is what my path was, and and I do, I lead more positively, and there's conversations that I can have that maybe I'm still essentially saying the same thing, but it's just not as, shall we say, abrasive or something like that.
Yeah.
As I've gotten older, and so I know, like, the people that I'm kind of connecting to nowadays, like that's probably a common denominator, man. Like everyone's just kind of I want to say in search, maybe. The group is still kind of after their own truth, whatever that is, and but it's personal. It's specific to themselves. It's not trying to figure out anyone else other than themselves, and in doing so, that just kind of improves everything else around you, which is like, it's a bit of a paradox, but like, I don't know.
No, I totally get that. And, when I was throwing, I was the type of guy who I had to dislike everyone I was throwing against in order to compete. That's just the way I was brought up. And, I can remember times, vividly in my memory of like my mother saying things like, I remember starting football in the 6th grade and went out for practice. And I remember being in the kitchen and my mother saying, "Oh, your father thinks you're going to quit in a week." So I played football until all the way through high school. I never even really enjoyed it, but fuck, if I was going to quit, my guess is my father never said a goddamn thing. She just pulled that in, but that became how I competed. Oh, you say I can't do that? Well, fuck you. Watch this, It was okay for the actual athletic portion of my life. It was absolute dog shit for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And any interaction I had with people during that time I was competing at that level was really difficult. And I've since sent out, and people will know this, they've gotten text messages from me out of the blue, and I haven't talked to you in 15 years. And I might not say, "Hey, sorry I was a dickhead to you," but you might get a text saying, "Hey, I'm really proud of the shit you're doing. Great job." And it's kind of my mea culpa for being a dickhead my entire 20s and 30s, and once I kind of looked within myself and figured out I can be successful without crushing the people around me. And we can all be successful together, and that rising tide raises all boats. And it started a snowball effect in every aspect of my life, where I could start really getting into my brain and figuring out what it is, what's wrong, how to fix it. And not only did it help with my business and my dealing with clients, but it helped with just my mindset. My relationship with my wife is fantastic, because when we first got together, I was always suspicious of everything. Where's she going? Why is she doing this? And that was all on me, because I was such a scumbag during my 20s and 30s that I was putting that on her. And I had to realize that.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, it takes that little bit of being willing to look at your own faults, and then all of a sudden life gets a lot better and people get a lot nicer and friendlier to you because you're not being a dickhead to them.
Yeah, and it's I mean, it's kind of an energy thing too. Like if you're walking around, with your your eyes all squinted and looking around for the next thing around the bend that's like gonna hurt you. Like that's kind of what you're gonna find.
Yeah.
That's what's gonna attract itself to you, and you're always gonna feel hurt and betrayed or whatever. Anyway, yeah, being like in being kind of in that. I mean, I like that similarity too, because Chris and I would say it's kind of in the same thing. Like I went through. I remember what it feels like, and like and just the energy in my body when the motivation was to crush everyone else.
Yeah.
and again, it's one of those things like you know, you will still have some success doing that, maybe, probably, but like in the long run, like it's not sustainable.
No.
I would say it just isn't at all. And so, but I mean, that's also kind of the part of the path of the athlete, and this is a bit of a Dow of Hammer thing too, like a lot of things. But that would be kind of part of the athlete to kind of learn and grow out of those being the seeds that get the kind of performances that you want. And I think I just put in social media recently, like, I mean, so yeah, that's how I used to kind of use the motivation, but the moment that it kind of shifted from wanting to dominate everyone else to dominating my own mind, like everything changed.
Yes.
And it was a kind of a simple shift. It's harder because in a way, like the work there never stops, but it's more rewarding in that, like, I mean, no one else was there. Like I didn't give a shit who was lining up. You know what I mean? It just kind of like I was there for me.
Yeah.
And I think when we talk about like competition anxiety and a lot of these other things, like, I'm not a sports psychologist, but like I read a lot and I've done a lot. And so I think there's a lot to be said for, intrinsic versus motivations coming from the outside, and how that reflects on just being confident and stable and, in the middle of a hammer throw, but just in competing in general. It gets a lot harder when you're worried about everyone else. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
what's that person gonna do for you? You know what I mean? So like, yeah.
Especially with a sport like that, where it comes down to your performance. No one's going to tackle you while you're in the circle.
Exactly. No one's going to tackle you. They're not going to throw it for you. They're not even going to catch it for you, no matter how much you might want them to. your I don't know, your enemies or whatever you want to call them, they're not going to be in the field like running after the hammer. So like you might as well just do it yourself.
Yeah. And, one of the things that I love about you guys, you and Crystal both, and it's a story that I've had related to me since you guys were on the podcast. But anytime I would mention you guys to people that were at Ashland when you were there, they would always talk about how if you guys had a party, everyone was invited. There was never, oh, don't invite that guy. Everyone was included. Everyone was made to feel welcome. And I just really think that you guys, you guys seem to be wise beyond your years at that time. How many college kids are like that? It's a story that, and I think it's a definitely a testament to both of you and the way you deal with humans on a daily basis.
Yeah. To be fair, we were older by a couple of years than most of them, but we also still had the post collegiate group, like in those couple years there, was really large as well. But anyway, I mean, it is so. Excuse me, like Chris and I, like our upbringings are pretty vastly different. You know what I mean? She lived in the same town her whole life, the same house. you know what I mean, went to school with kids that she went to school with, and kindergarten and the whole thing. And I've moved however many times, from California. I usually lived in all cities, but like we share, I think, a lot of similar situations and experiences that I think kind of drive how we ultimately end up treating other people. That might be the best way to say it. And so it's one of those things that, like, you know what I mean? Inclusion has always been number one, regardless. And also, and I'll have to say too, like, that wasn't really, I mean, yeah, we made the offers or whatever, but like almost every time the ones that we're inviting, that like most people were like, oh no, don't invite them, or like, sure, really? Those guys always came.
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean? They could be like, yeah, no, I'm gonna, I'm just gonna chill at home or whatever. And but yeah, most of the time they came. And so like that's what made it awesome. And
Right.
yeah, those were good times.
What is it, when someone asks me about you guys, I talk about how you're kind of that warrior philosopher, and Crystal is beautifully nutty.
Oh yeah.
She is as wonderfully crazy as they come. Yeah. And you seem to be the guy who just keeps everything centered. And so what is that dynamic like with the two of you?
I mean, it's really awesome, man. Like, it's like getting into more, I'm drawing a blank on my word, but I mean, she's a witch, basically.
Yeah.
A warrior witch. And I mean, whatever I am, that kind of complements that. It's amazing. It's violent in every which way that you can think, like, positive, negative, good, bad, whatever. And it's like, and again, it's complementary. And I think in the last few years, like, as we've kind of gone through our little transformations individually, collectively, like together, the whole thing has just gotten better.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. And it's you just wouldn't really think of it that way, right? Like, I think trying to have better relationships with someone, it's usually well, you need to talk to that person and make a better relationship. And like, yeah, there's a little bit of value there, but like ultimately it's the inside that does the real work. Yeah. But yeah, man, like she's a warrior witch, and I'm a king, and the kings yeah. They're a little bit more understated, and you know what I mean, like they don't usually fly off, but like she's got the witch to kind of do all that stuff, or vice versa. It's just it's a lot of energy play that I think right now in this moment we're really rocking that.
Yeah, 100%. And Aaron and I are probably the exact opposite. Is I'm the emotional one. I'm the one who I get out of bed in the morning and let's just get after it. We're gonna go, and she's a little bit more, okay, let's just calm down for a second. That's great. You want to do that. Let's make a plan, and I just want to go all the time. So, I mean, I get that 100%, but it's interesting to watch you guys. And I just love you guys both so much. And it's Crystal will post something and I'll just look at my phone and just shake my head. Like she's nuts. She's wonderful, but she's nuts,
So like, yeah, man, like, and there's this thing that's there, and it kind of always has been there. At least I've kind of seen it, and not really known exactly what it was or how she could use it, but it is absolutely coming out lately. You know what I mean? like both in just kind of how she shares things and publicly, and then our relationship as our partnership, and then also being parents. Like it's an interesting ride. I don't know. We'll have to, like, we've kind of talked about like trying to do more things together, like podcast wise, or just public things, and I think it'll be really good. She's been on a bit of a roll sharing some things lately, so and like I'm a bit of like the litmus, like I don't know, because typically I am kind of like the one that's like more chill and emotionally and outward displays or whatever, and so I've been trying to like really work on like really letting her know with like like my eyeballs and like faces and that sort of body language, I guess. When it's something that I really like, besides just saying like, yeah, babe, that was really cool, and because she's one that responds to that much better than I would. Like she could say, babe, that was really awesome, and I would just be lit up inside. You know what I mean? For her, it doesn't really. It's not as effective for me to say it that way to her.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I get, like I said, I'm much more like Crystal, where Erin is probably a lot more like you, and she'll, I think it was because I have a tendency to share things on Instagram that it's with me, it's more of a plea to people to be better, to take care of themselves, to get off the couch, to stop living this life where they're just going to work and just coming home and sitting there and watch TV. And when I post something like that, it's me brooding over it for like an hour and then going, here we go. And we're just going to post this shit, and yep, 100%. And, but I totally get that whole dynamic for sure. But I think you guys, I've been yelling at her to do a podcast for years now, because I think it'd be a great way for her to get it out. But you two together would be fantastic.
Yeah. Oh, well, we'll see. And things are a little bit different now. Like she's got a little bit more time. I don't know. I mean, it's, you kind of, when you're ready to do it, you're kind of ready to do it. And
yeah,
no one knows that better than me, right? I mean, she's over the years had a few things, not just her, really anyone else. And you try to get told to do something and it just doesn't really click sometimes, and learning how to be okay with that and essentially supporting in that, even though like in your head it's like, oh god, you're missing so much, right? Like it's the same thing in coaching.
Yeah.
And something that I really implemented like the last few years, because I don't know, the disappointment, especially like the observable disappointment, does way more damage to an athlete than people realize. You know what I mean? And the same thing goes for relationships. It's all relationships. It's just kind of a general rule, I think.
Yeah, that was something I really and I struggle with to this day. And I'm really working on getting better at it with the people I work with, because I have zero poker face when it comes to, I'm disappointed in you. You should have done this better. And I have to realize, it used to be that, we would do a workout and we would have a girl, we have a couple at the gym, and the girl will go over and get a 50-pound kettlebell, and her husband will go over and get a 35-pound kettlebell. And the look on my face would just be like pure disappointment and almost outrage, and I had to learn to kind of go, all right, he's on his own trip. He doesn't give a fuck that his wife is swinging a heavier kettlebell, and I've really been working on that.
Isn't that interesting though?
Oh yeah.
Your insides are like, come on, geez. It's freeing when you can do it. And it's like, so that's something that I really work with, like with my daughters, and is the way I grew up, there was a lot of like unsaid disciplining. You know what I mean? Depending on the behavior, like, and you get a look, you know what I mean? And it's like, you better, and of course, like, and that's kind of how I've kind of parented a lot. And it's only been, I don't know, some months, maybe a year tops, that I've been trying to consciously not do that. And actually, and it kind of, I'm kind of, I guess, ashamed a bit to say it. I actually started working on this with my athletes a couple of years ago, before, I don't know, it occurred to me, shall we say, to bring it home and like work on it with the girls. But I think the deal with that was I just didn't realize. I didn't realize that I did it, A, as much, and B, that it was probably as impactful as it was on them. And it's a lot to like, it's not really about not disciplining. It's more about, it'll just be like random shit, you know what I mean? And something that doesn't need a look, they're not in trouble. They haven't really done anything, but because the look on my face says something, and they're really they definitely take after Crystal. And like the emotional, Brooklyn's kind of like a wonderful mix of both of us, but that emotional component, I would say she kind of gets some Crystal, and Ruby's pretty much Crystal.
Yeah.
Just a lot smaller and brown. But which is all wonderful things. And so it's like, it's literally like my journey to learn how to like relate to people myself, but other people is like having to do it with all the women in my house. So
Yeah.
if we have another kid, maybe we'll get a boy, because I had to go through that journey. Maybe, I don't know.
Wait, did you just say you are having another kid? Was that a
I said maybe if we have another one. I'd like one, sure.
I didn't know if that was a drop that you just hit me.
I would make way more of a
I figured, I didn't think you were
going on.
It's parenting is so tricky. And when Hayden was born in 2005, I look back on, Highland Games was great. Highland Games, the pro Highland Games circuit was how I made the majority of my money. I was paying my mortgage. I was paying my car bills and all this stuff. And which is stupid that you can get that much money throwing rocks and telephone poles in a skirt. But I still had that mentality of just, I wasn't a great person. And I look back at the way I was as a father back then too. And you just look at yourself and go, oh, fuck, I could have done that so much better. And when I find myself in that position, I really have to snap myself out of it and go, all you can be is the best father you can be right this second. Right. And Hayden is so laid back and so, and to tell you the truth, I don't know where he got it from, because he certainly didn't get it from me. His mother, I'm divorced and I remarried Aaron, but his biological mother is also a maniac. Yeah. So where he got this Zen approach to life, I don't know. It's probably from Aaron, who is more laid back. But I looked at how I was as a father when he was young, and it's embarrassing. But all you can do is be as good as you can be today and tomorrow, and just work on yourself. And hopefully, I think I've gotten better at it. But what I will say about your girls is, when we went down to hang out and you brought them to dinner both times, most kids at that age would have driven me up a fucking wall.
Yeah.
And not only did they not drive me up a wall, but it was a joy to have them in the restaurant with us. And that's a testament to how you guys are as parents. So whatever you're doing, don't fuck with it too much.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's that legacy thing, and trying to help usher, your own kids and your athletes into, being productive members of society.
That's the most important, right? I mean,
Which, when you say it that way, I mean, it sounds like a lot of pressure. So, but it doesn't feel like a weight. It's not pressure. It's just that's just what the goal is, I guess.
Sure. Keep them out of jail. Keep them off drugs. Make sure they're successful in whatever that's going to mean to them. And I to this day I still haven't asked Hayden what he wants to be when he grows up. I don't care, as long as he's happy doing it. I'm good with that.
This is hammer thrower.
I told him he could be an Olympic hammer thrower or a Navy SEAL. Those were his two choices.
Right, yeah. It's about the same amount of craziness.
Right. Yeah.
So
yeah.
what else is going on in your end? What do you
the gym, we moved during COVID, which goes back to my craziness. We went from a 6,000 square foot gym, which was way too big for us, and we used very little of it. And we moved to a place about half the size of it during the pandemic. And I've kind of implemented this system that we talked about earlier in the podcast, this Bruce Lee water system. We've not only done that, but we've implemented meditation and yoga, and it's just been a complete shift in what we do with our people. We have 3 pillars: health, strength, and form, that we are just pounding into everyone's head. That the first thing that they come in, I just want to get them as healthy as possible. Let's get them off any kind of shitty medications they might be on. Let's look at their nutritional plan and get them healthy. Let's work on meditation. Let's work on just making themselves mentally and physically healthy. And then let's start swinging some kettlebells and see how strong we can get with that. And then, we'll do some running, and we'll do some jumping, and we'll do some primal movements. And once that's all taken care of, then wow, you start to look better in your cocktail dress, and that form part of it comes into place. So we're doing a lot with having those 3 pillars in mind with everything we do program wise for the gym. I wanted to talk to you a little bit, maybe off air, because it's a whole nother 2-hour discussion about using kettlebells more often with my throwers. It's something that I wish I would have been more into when I was throwing, because when I started kind of dicking around with these things, it felt so much like what I was doing as a Highland Games athlete that it just clicked in my head, and I've gone down this kettlebell rabbit hole, and it's really something I'm implementing with Hayden, but I'm going to start implementing it more and more with my throwers, because I think it just makes a lot of sense to me. So we're doing a lot with that. And then with the podcast, we've now gone to Zoom, and we're getting some really fantastic guests on there, people. And it's nice to be able to talk to people like you guys and that are on the other side of the country, and we don't get to talk to that often. So finally the technology is catching up to my desire to have people on the show.
Yeah, serious.
What about you guys? What is going on in Canada?
Well, I mean, so she's got a job that works really well. She's got a decent amount of time available in the day to like continue to work her ketone business, and a lot of the other things that she does, like kind of social media wise and creating content and talking to people. So that's really fortunate. The girls are going to a really awesome school. We're out on the island, so like the weather is really good.
Yeah.
But it's no Florida.
Yeah.
The other morning it was like 40 degrees, which is that's kind of chilly, and like everyone's losing, like the girls they're losing their tan, and it's like, oh yeah, but it kind of is what it is. I'm still working some things. I got a couple opportunities, I guess is a good word, We'll see kind of what happens there. I think what's nice about our current situation is it kind of allows, like, there's some freedom there to not be terribly stressed about that. So, like, I mean, there's kind of dribblings of money, but it's by no means like a salary that I've got coming in or anything like that.
Right.
So I mean, that's hard, but like at this point, it kind of is what you make it. So
You're free.
I'm free, right? And it's like, you're trying to do what you're trying to do, but ultimately, the freedom that I would say that I desire is the freedom to essentially just do what I want. That doesn't mean, that I'm a multi-millionaire or anything, but having a little bit more would definitely lend itself to do that, right? So like we would probably, like, our perfect vision is probably like, yeah, we would either school in one place, so like say where we are now, or homeschool, and then just kind of be around the world. Like that's
yeah.
And that's another thing too. Like I've kind of grown up that way anyway. Every 2, 3, 4, 5 years, outside of Georgia and California, I've lived in, I don't know, 4 or 5, 6 other places, and they were all 2 to 3 years. And so it makes sense to me that like every few years I just kind of get a niche. I'm just like, what else is there to experience? Like this is kind of good. But like Chris is the same way, having lived in one place, the majority of her life, or younger life, we should say now at this rate. But that would be pretty incredible, I think.
Yeah, we're looking. Well, as you know, she's thinking Tennessee now. So
like in the mountains.
Yeah, I told her I wanted to be south of the Mason-Dixon line. I don't care where you go. She moved to Ohio to be with me. That's a big enough sacrifice because this place is god awful. So wherever we go, as long as it's south and I don't have to deal with winter anymore, I'm good with that. We're going to do another iteration of the training down there. I've got some real kind of outside the box ideas for that, but we're the same way. We just want to travel and see things and go places. And neither one of us likes to be in one place too long. As far as the money goes, I've realized over the years that if you have enough money to go out to dinner when you want to go out to dinner and, pay your bills without having to worry about what's in the checking account, that's rich beyond belief. And it's rich beyond what 99% of the population in the world has to deal with. And you certainly don't need excess. You just need to have enough that you don't have to worry. And that's rich in my book.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it would be nice to do all that. So, I mean, like Costa Rica or something like that, or Bali. I don't know about living in Bali, but definitely
Bali's on the bucket list for us for sure.
Oh yeah, that's up there. She wants to be warm. She wants to be warm kind of like all the time, which I find interesting. Like she's the born and raised Canadian. I'm from California. Like where I don't really care.
There's a different mindset with people like us. I'm a Cleveland, Ohio boy, and I'm just tired. It's 47 years of shitty weather. I just got to be warm. Get me warm again. I got a sauna at the gym I use every day, but it's not doing it. I need some heat.
Yeah, without being claustrophobic in the heat.
Yeah, I understand her thought process on that for sure.
So, do you have any final words or anything you want to promote? I mean, I guess Refine Savage, man, or
like you can find me on Instagram, Refine Savage Actual. We do a podcast that comes out once a week. We've had people on like yourself. I said Jack Donovan was on a couple weeks ago. We've had authors and athletes, and it's basically people who interest me and I want to talk to, and hopefully if they interest me, they'll interest other people. You can see a lot of my incoherent ramblings on there and some of my training, and I kind of use it as a personal page too. So at Refined Savage Actual, and you can come check me out there. But nothing really to promote, That's pretty much it. Just living life and swinging kettlebells.
Yeah, just living. I can appreciate that. All right, man. Well, thank you for joining me, but it's more like an us probably.
Yeah, because I want to release it on mine too. Give where people can find you guys.
Oh, so you can find me Martillo Kibwe, which is hammer in Espanol. I picked that title before it was verified, and you got to go through a bunch of rigmarole to change it back, and it's one of those things I just can't be bothered. I don't really care.
Right.
And I've got a website, kibwejohnson.win, which I thought was a really cool tagline, and that one's kind of in transition. I'm working on a couple projects. One, as you know, Dow of Hammer, but I'm also finally putting the finishing touches on a course that I've probably been on and off developing for a couple of years, and now is a bit of the time because I'm becoming distinctly aware, regardless of if I have a quote job or salary or not, there are things and projects that I would like to be available kind of at all times, right? There are things that I would like to be available that people can hopefully find some value in, that don't necessarily need me to be there with them at all times. And then there's kind of random bits of coaching. I coach like a couple people, but yeah, that part kind of got minimized, and especially over the summer when there were other specific coaching opportunities, but they just kind of didn't work out. But that's about it for me. Crystal, she is the Conscious Queen, at the Conscious Queen on Instagram, and I don't think she's relaunched her website yet, but it's basically the same, and you can find like all her content, and she's really tapping into her things lately. But a lot of really good things coming on, like the energies are nice. So I'm looking forward to like what the next 12 months has to offer.
I'm looking forward to watching it.
Yeah, man.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. And let me know when you're going to release this, and I'll release it like the week after or something.
Cool. All right. So yeah, and we'll stay in contact.
Absolutely. We'll do this again for sure.
All right. Cheers.
All right. See ya.